Do you ever go from crushing complex code one day to struggling with the simplest task the next? Well, if that happens, it may not be laziness or burnout, but it could be ADHD. I've been there myself, and in this video, I'm going to reveal the 5 signs your productivity struggles may actually be ADHD and how you can turn it into a superpower. Hi, I'm Anto. I'm a software engineer, and despite having ADHD, I've managed to build a successful career in software engineering. Let's see what are these 5 signs. Sign number 1. The roller coaster of performance. Some days you are on fire with genius ideas, and some other days you cannot finish the simplest coding task. And I used to think that I was either a coding wizard or the worst engineer on the planet. And this has been constantly happening, especially at the beginning of my career. And I was alternating weeks where I was doing amazing complex job and solving really complex architectural problems, and all of a sudden the week after or the day after, I was sometimes even in the same day, I was completely unable to debug the most basic function. And with time I realized there are a number of factors that can have an impact on that. For me, one of the most important is to pay attention to my diet. So if you have this first sign, make sure you start to keep track of your diets and food habits and how they have an impact on your mental clarity, what is going to happen when you eat a specific type of food. So what I realized with time, it may not work for you, but generally even research suggests that use of carbs is generally having a negative impact on my mental clarity. So if I need to stay focused on a specific task, I try to avoid during that session any carb, and before that session I try to avoid any carb. Obviously I'm Italian, and skipping carbs is kind of sacrilege and is very hard. So take notes of the relation between food, task and mental clarity. Sign number 2, the weekend warrior syndrome. This is what I realized with time. So at the beginning of my career, what I was doing, I was spending the time in the office not really doing any intense activity. I was doing meetings, I was talking to colleagues, more doing what I would define social activities in the office. But then anything that required deep focus, the office was not the right environment. For me, it was normal to use part of my weekend to complete all my tasks. And I was having very good results of work and good productivity because I was able to super focus during the weekend, build and deliver whatever I had to build, and then I was just polishing during the week, so just doing little refinement here and there, but all the deep work was happening in few hours during the weekend. So that worked, but with time life started to become a little bit more complicated with kids and additional commitments and I started to see that my time was not enough during the weekend, and I also was context switching during the weekend. I didn't have that peace and calm that I had before, so that started to feel very hard to reproduce week after week. So my suggestion for this is try to understand what is absorbing your energies during these sessions, especially what are the differences between environments. For example, for me in the office, if I am in a particular area of the office, for example too close to the relax area, for me it becomes harder to concentrate because people go there, have chats, and the noise can be disruptive. So I need to do little adjustment on that side and make sure I position myself in the best possible way in a different environment. So that's one suggestion, is try to look at the elements that may impact your attention, your focus, and based on that take counteractions. Sign number 3, time shrinks when life gets busy. And this is exactly correlated with the sign number 2, where I started to feeling all the other commitments outside of work were taking away any possibility for me to have contiguous time where I was able to do deep work. And that had a direct impact on me, where I started to feel suffocated by my own thoughts of I'm unable to complete this task, I won't be able to deliver this. And that was literally occupying my entire mental bandwidth. And with time, I learned how to manage those feelings and how to make sure I was able to focus and put away those thoughts that were not actionable. They were just the constant voice telling you, oh, you're going to be late, you're going to be late, you're going to be late. And that was not helping. It was just moving me into a place where I started to have that feeling of anxiety, and to the point where I started questioning my own abilities. And this leads us to sign number 4, which is exactly questioning your abilities. And I don't know if you ever heard of the imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome is a persistent feeling of inadequacy where you feel that you are constantly doubting yourself, and despite having evidence of success or competence, you constantly think, oh, that was luck, and you don't feel you own that specific competence. So it's very interesting, and I think I've already done a video about the imposter syndrome. I will probably revisit that because at the time I didn't have my ADHD diagnosis, so I will probably do another video about that. So let me know down in the comments if you want to hear about imposter syndrome, and specifically for people or software engineers with ADHD. But yeah, so about this sign number 4, the other thing I wanted to say is that the imposter syndrome is a good thing, but ADHD people will be particularly vulnerable to that and can be persisting and constantly bothering you during the day or during the weeks. So is something you need to understand. So I would suggest you have a look at what is the imposter syndrome and the correlated Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect is, to explain this probably I need an entire video, but if you look at this diagram where there is this curve where you have on the 2 axes, you have the confidence and the competence, and you will see that at the beginning you have a very high level of confidence and very little competence. And with time, you're going to increase your competence, but you almost never reach the initial level of confidence because probably you got burned at the beginning. But it's very interesting, and also understanding how that works will give you will make you feel a little bit more comfortable about your feeling and your thoughts. So now we have sign number 5 at the end, which is the all or nothing focus. And this is a characteristic that I can focus for an interrupted amount of time that can be also very long, or cannot focus at all, not be able to do any progress with a specific activity. And I have a couple of examples. I remember when I was at uni, I was trying to understand how to modify my Xbox, and the task required understanding a little bit how to disassemble the Xbox and how to do soldering of a circuit on the main board, and then doing the testing and the rebooting and changing the bootloader for the Xbox. And that activity was so fascinating and was so interesting for me that I remember I worked for 16 hours non-stop trying to understand what to do, how to do proper soldering, how to make sure I wasn't destroying my Xbox, and how to put everything together again. And I remember I spent 16 hours without drinking or without eating any food. I was just hammering that thing, trying to figure out how to do it. And also at the end, when everything worked, I was inundated of dopamine. So I had that incredible feeling of achievement, and that was extremely good. I still remember the sensation. I still remember how it was. And then there are other situations where I really cannot make progress unless I found a way to make that activity a little bit more interesting. And I have a couple of examples that are related to what I'm doing now at work, which is like there are activities that I found extremely boring, and these are reviewing CVs or doing mandatory training. And sometimes just to make progress on them, I need to come up with crazy strategies. Or one thing that I discovered recently is that if the task is too easy, I need to keep my body doing something else. So I'm able to do some of my training while walking. I found myself able to concentrate a little bit more. So to recap, the 5 signs are the performance roller coaster, where you have up and downs in your performance and you don't really know why. Then there is the weekend warrior syndrome, where you try to work during the weekend to compensate for the lack of focus that you have during your work week. Try to focus your environment, try to see what you need to fix. Then the feeling that the time is shrinking when your life gets more busy. This is due to not having contiguous time. So again, the focus should be on your environment. Make sure you have an environment where you can work and is collaborating with you and with your brain. So these are the so-called reasonable adjustments at work, or you can also define them in your personal life. And then the fourth one is the imposter syndrome. If you have that feeling, understand how the imposter syndrome works and try to leverage that and to reassure yourself whenever you have that feeling. And finally, the all or nothing focus. When you have activities that don't stimulate you, you need to engineer ways to make them more interesting and how you can do that. So if these 5 signs are familiar and resonate with you, I'll strongly suggest you seek for professional advice. I did it very late, so a couple of years ago, and I have to say it's never too late, because since I got my diagnosis, I started to see everything through the lens of the ADHD and start understanding how to operate in a better way. So my suggestion is try to understand how your brain works, and you will be 10 times better, because it's going to be liberating understanding that you're not broken, you're just different, and you need to figure out how things are working in your brain. You can also download my free book. It's a productivity framework for software engineers that have ADHD. Is written in a ADHD friendly. I have written it with AI, and I made a video about how I wrote that book. So you may find the video up here and the link to download the book down in the description. Let me know what you think. Comment down below. I will be happy to read your comments, and if you have suggestions for another video, just let me know what you would like me to cover, and see you in the next one. Bye.